The internet has changed our world from one where dopamine was crucial for survival to one where we can't even go 5 minutes without. And if we allow it, dopamine will have us walking through life on autopilot, wasting time on meaningless activities, creating a very real fear that we're not in control of our lives. There are two main reasons why dopamine is holding us back. Firstly, we all make mistakes in how we respond to dopamine, although this is very hard to recognize. Secondly, we could be using dopamine as a tool to enhance our lives, but we don't know how, as it isn't something that we ever get taught in school. I'm going to show you the mistakes that we all make in our response to dopamine, and I'm going to show you how to fix them. By the end of this video, you'll start to spot dopamine triggers in your own life, and also be armed with the skill set to do something about them. But before I show you the monumental mistakes that we make in our response to dopamine, I want to see if you can spot the dopamine trigger in this first clip. Because the problem with dopamine first starts with a trigger, and simply just getting good at spotting these triggers is the first step to living the life that you want. Did you spot the trigger? Well, it was actually a trick question. There wasn't just one trigger in this clip, there was actually 7, which is what we're up against. We aren't simply exposed to dopamine a handful of times a day. Dopamine is literally everywhere, which brings us on to the reason why dopamine is a bigger problem right now today than it has been at any time in history. And that is abundance. The rise of the internet now means that our brains are exposed to more types of dopamine than they can physically cope with. And when it comes to dopamine, the more we're exposed to it, the more addictive it becomes. And it's so much easier today to access dopamine than it has been at literally any point in history so far. Before, if you wanted to watch a movie, you had to do all of this. Whereas now all you have to do is... But it doesn't stop here, because the dopamine we're exposed to today is considerably more potent than it has been historically. The goal of food companies is to make more money, and they do this by selling more food. And the easiest way to sell more food is to make the food they sell to you as addictive as possible. You might beat yourself up when you buy something sweet, but really it's you up against a team of 50 scientists. And when you're tired and hungry, you don't really stand a chance. Vaping has really taken off recently, but did you know it's actually more addictive than traditional cigarettes? You know, those things that governments have been trying to get rid of for the past 20 years? I think there's this assumption that it's healthier because electronic cigarettes contain less harmful chemicals than traditional ones, but nobody really is talking about the associated consequences of becoming addicted and the associated anxiety and depression, which leads us on to the silent killer of self-esteem: social media. Social media is definitely something I've struggled to come to terms with over the past 10 years since it's become a thing. On one hand, it's this incredibly useful tool to keep in touch with old friends and make new ones, but on the other, looking at images of the highlights of other people's lives through a filter really distorts our own perceptions of what the world is really like. I'd be lying if I told you I hadn't looked at an image of somebody else's lifestyle and said I want something similar to that. But the lifestyle they're showing doesn't even exist. It's a filtered moment which only ever existed online and not in reality. It's so frustrating that it makes it so easy to keep up with what friends are doing, but at the same time creates this filtered world which we all believe is real when it's just not. It doesn't really show you the moment after the photo was taken, the moment when they were like tired and hungry and really had like a miserable day. It just shows you like this perfect moment which, yeah, they took the photo and it's there online, but it never really existed in the first place. But think back in your own life. Have you ever taken a photo that perhaps didn't truly capture the reality of the moment you were trying to? I've come to the personal opinion that my life is better off without social media, and if I want to meet friends, I just text them to meet up with them. But I'm only really in a position to do that because I finished school and university. If you're in a position where social media is crucial for attending social events, then it's not something you can really give up, especially when you're young. The nail in the coffin really came for me when I realized the technique social media uses to keep you addicted to the apps is the same psychology that makes gambling so addictive. It goes beyond the simple dopamine rush when you get a like on something that you post. Social media actually keeps you addicted when you don't get any likes. You open your app of choice, and sometimes when you open it you have like a long list of notifications to go through, and then other times there's just absolutely nothing there. Well, that's not by coincidence. It's this very uncertainty whether you have any notifications which makes social media so addictive, and the reason why we keep checking our phones multiple times a day. We don't know when we're going to get a notification, and it's this uncertainty of getting a notification that is exactly the same as the uncertainty involved in gambling. And it just so happens that this uncertainty is at its most addictive when it's at 50-50, i.e. maximum uncertainties such as roulette or getting a notification when you open Instagram. So we live in this world where dopamine has never been more abundant and never been more potent than it is right now. And after a while, it can all start to feel overwhelming. Fortunately for us, there are 3 things that we can do to stop dopamine taking control of our lives. The first is the essential that we can't really expect to conquer dopamine without. The second is straight up unusual, and it isn't something that you'd really think of, but it plays a really important role in creating balance in our lives. And the third, no matter who you are, is something that we could all strive to do better at. But first, the thing that we must all do if we were to even stand a chance against dopamine, and that is abstinence. If we're going to want to take back control of our lives, first we're going to have to stop taking whatever drug of choice it is that we use to escape from the world. Addiction is a spectrum and we all fall somewhere along it. You might have a serious addiction to alcohol or weed, or you might just use TikTok to zone out at the end of the day. But whatever you use to escape from the world is affecting your life. But why do we have to stop completely? Can't we just cut back? Well, while we're still using our personal drug of choice, we can't really see the effects that it's having on our life. It's weird, but most of the time we don't even realize we're addicted. Imagine eating chocolate. How does it make you feel? It makes you feel good, right? Well, this is how we consume everything. It basically makes it really difficult to distinguish what's good for you and what's bad. But just pause for just 1 second. If you had to pin it down to just one thing, what would it be for you? Would you consider giving it up for a month just to see the impact that it's having on your life? The next step to overcoming dopamine might sound really weird, but just bear with me on it, just trust me. And the step is that basically seeking pain is really important to living like a balanced lifestyle. And that's because pain and pleasure both operate in the same parts of the brain. You see, pain is a natural emotion and we shouldn't try to run from it. If we never experience pain, we wouldn't appreciate the good moments in life. In society, there's this belief that pain is bad and that we should do anything to avoid it. But allowing ourselves to experience pain is actually our brain's own way of dealing with pain. We have to process emotions. We can't just go through life on autopilot. And seeking out our own pain can help when it comes to dealing with pain from our addictions. We can do this through embracing behaviors that trigger pain, such as exercise, stretching, and cold water exposure, which help maintain the body's natural balance. It's weird, but exposing ourselves to pain means we become less vulnerable to the pain from our addictions and more able to experience pleasure. Put simply, if we chase our own sources of pain, then the pain from our addictions isn't as bad. But pursuing pain isn't as easy as pursuing pleasure. It requires effort to get up and motivate yourself to exercise. However, exercise, stretching, and cold water exposure also all release dopamine. Can you spot the problem? Anything that releases dopamine also has the power to be addictive. If we consume too much pain or if it's too potent, we run the risk of destructive overconsumption. If we discover the right balance of pain, combating pain from addiction with a little pain of our own choosing, then it puts us on the path to a balanced life. But if we really want a balanced life, then we're going to have to work better at being more present. Today, we live in a world where we are constantly seeking to be distracted from the current moment. We're constantly scrolling through TikTok or Instagram or even just listening to music. And on the surface, it might not seem like a bad thing, like we literally never have to be bored ever again. All we have to do is open our phone and we can be entertained for hours at a time. But unlimited stimulation can leave us feeling detached from the real world and create anxiety to an extent where we no longer feel comfortable in our own world. On a personal level, I used to use my phone in social situations where it could potentially be awkward. Rather than have the possibility of a conversation with a stranger, I just get out my phone to avoid situations. Whereas right now, when I have spare time, I actually just try and do nothing. Like, it sounds stupid, but just doing nothing just allows you to be more present in the world you're living. You become more comfortable in public places and you don't feel the urge to make yourself look like you're busy or important. You just be yourself. I'm not saying we shouldn't use our phones at all. All I'm saying is my life on a personal level is better the less I use my phone. We all desire an escape from the world and the impossible standards that we all set for ourselves. This causes us to end up chasing short-term highs to distract ourselves. But the world is a fascinating place, and instead of running away, we should immerse ourselves in our world, striving towards a balanced life where we pursue both pleasure and pain in equal measure.